What is up, duelists, and happy new year to all of you. And it is time for the 2025 Yu-Gi-Oh! Game Design Awards. That's right, we're going to kick off 2026 with one final look at all the things that happened in Yu-Gi-Oh! In 2025, but not my personal opinion on the matter, but rather the communities. I did make a survey, just like I did last year, asking you guys for both TCG and Master Duel about all the things that happened this year, you know, which kind of cards, products, decks, sets you liked or didn't like, and other things, of course, that happened across the year. So presented all of this over on my Twitch channel on the last day of 2025, and now you're going to get to see all of it compiled here in one video. Hope you enjoy. Hope you take this as an opportunity to, you know, just kind of like review the year and maybe some of the things to expect coming forward in 2026 as well. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, but for now, hope you enjoy the video. Yu-Gi-Oh! Card Game Design Awards 2025. I have asked around in the communities on what people thought of the card and game design and some other decisions that were made to Yu-Gi-Oh! Or in Yu-Gi-Oh! In 2025. And I have gathered the results. We have received almost 4,700 responses to the survey, so huge thank you to everyone who participated. Last year, we barely reached 1,000. We had 1,300 last year, so it was a lot more than last year. So thank you so much for participating, everyone who took the time. And also thank you so much to my fiance for putting together this little presentation and working through the numbers with me and so on and so forth. It was not an easy task to compile all of these responses. Of course, I want to preface this by saying that while I do think reaching almost 5,000 people is very, very nice, and I did try to get other content creators involved, and I asked people to share it in their communities and stuff like that because I wanted to get everyone's opinion. I do think a large portion of the people that participated are, of course, people from my community, my viewers and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if we reached every corner of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community, but I tried to get in as many as possible. So yeah, the main purpose of all this was to just find out how people felt about Yu-Gi-Oh! This year. And of course, we have separated it into TCG and Master Duel. I asked people, are you actively playing TCG, Master Duel, or both? And this is the split we got this year. Around 43% of people that responded were just Master Duel players, 30% were just TCG players, and a solid 27% are playing both, which I think is already an interesting takeaway. I keep noticing this also when I create content for this game, is that there is large portions of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community that don't play both. There is actually a lot of people who just play TCG or just play Master Duel. And these two games, you know, in some periods of time, they are more similar. In others, they are further apart. They are definitely not the same game. And therefore, I've created two separate surveys for each, because I don't think you can really generalize over both games with one survey. So we're going to start with the TCG, and out of all the respondents, we got around 2,700 TCG players who responded to the questions. And the first question I asked was, which deck did you perceive as the most dominant deck in the TCG across all of 2025? And in third place with 18%, we had Mitsurugi Yami, which is a more recent development in the year. I mean, not that recent, but like second half of the year. It was a pretty dominant force. So 18% said Mitsurugi Yami. 21.6% still remember the terrors of Mitsurugi Raizeel, though, which I think is one of the decks that was far more dominant before Justice Hunters came out, of course, and before the bridge was burned between those two with King of the Feral Imps. And then in first place, we got the Malice, 34.4%, which, funnily enough, I would agree with this statement, but at the same time, it's funny to me, or it's interesting to point out that I think it always had a strong rival, and it hasn't won a YCS. But I think the reason why Malice is still in contention for the title of most dominant deck is because, like, these other decks, they came and they went, but Malice was always there, right? Malice was there in January. It just came out in last December. It was one of the best decks in Raizeel Malice format. Then, you know, we got Mitsurugi, and it was Raizeel Mitsurugi, but also Malice. Then Raizeel Mitsurugi went, you know, they hit it on a ban list. They also hit Malice, but Malice persisted. And then the Justice Hunters decks came out, and then everyone played that. And then after a while, people realized, hey, Malice is still good. And people found Mitsurugi Yami, and so on and so forth. And we got another ban list. And then people started playing Mitsurugi Yami and other decks, or VSK9 or whatever. But Malice was always there, right? I think it's fair to say Malice was the most dominant deck. I wouldn't be surprised if Malice had the most tops. Even though it doesn't have the most wins, I think it probably has the most tops across all of 2025. Just simply because it was a good deck in every format that we had. That's what people felt like in terms of the dominance of decks in the TCG. And the next question I asked, what was your least favorite deck to play against in the TCG in 2025? And with 8.81%, we had Atlantean Mermail appearing in the Game Design Awards. Certainly doesn't appear in the most dominant category because it is a deck that hasn't really won that much. I do believe it has won a YCS, I believe in Latin America. I think one was won or very close by Atlantean Mermail in the first half of the year. But yeah, the deck was definitely a menace for the time it was around. At the moment, you don't see it that much anymore, but people still remembered what it has done to them, like I would say first half of the year. Followed by 9.78% Mitsurugi Yami, a pretty dominant deck at the moment, and it is probably the deck at the moment alongside VSK9 that makes the strongest combo boards, and this deck very much falls into the category of if it gets to combo off, it probably wins the game, which is also true for Malice, 18.32%. Malice takes a second award, whether you think it's a positive or a negative one. Malice wins least fun deck to play against in TCG 2025 as decided by 18.3% of the voters. And this is how you know I asked other content creators to participate in this and sent this to their communities, because if this was just my community, I think this would be higher. This would probably be higher if it was just my viewers, but Malice still persists and wins this one. All right, on a positive note, most fun deck to play with in the TCG 2025. 5.82% said Fire King. Of course, the surprise winner of the first European YCS 2025 in the hands of Dinka Bui. Been one of my favorite decks to play with this year as well. Unfortunately, it didn't really take off after that YCS win. It wasn't really able to convert that into a meta dominance or anything of that nature, but it was really cool to see that the deck was able to win. Yeah, it takes a third place here at most fun deck to play in 2025, followed by Vanquish Soul K9. And yes, this is Vanquish Soul K9. I distinguished in the survey between Vanquish Soul and Vanquish Soul K9. They were two different options because I think they are two very different decks. And Vanquish Soul K9 took second place in this category. If you're wondering, I would have voted for pure Vanquish Soul as a whole, like as first place, but Vanquish Soul K9 takes second place. And I mean, that is probably also due to the nature that it was just a more powerful deck, so people had more success with it, especially before Stake Your Soul and Raisin were limited. Yeah, Vanquish Soul K9 takes a second place. And a first place, I think, not that hard to predict personally. Draco Tail. Draco Tail takes first place, most fun deck to play with in TCG 2025. People love Draco Tail, man, and I do too. What's also fun to play with is OCG sleeves and accessories. They got some pretty amazing stuff over in the OCG, and that's where a new sponsor of the channel comes in. Young Cards, a store located in Germany but ships worldwide, and they specialize on importing exclusive OCG product and selling it to people in the West, which I think is pretty awesome. You can use Josh10 for 10% off your order, which also supports the channel a little bit. And you can get some pretty amazing stuff like this Dragon Ruler playmat, which is exclusive from YCS Japan. I was able to give one of these away on my Twitch channel as a present from Young Cards to my community. And I've also got this Blackluster Soldier playmat to give away to one of you guys. So one lucky commenter is going to win this one. We also got some pretty amazing sleeves, like these Molcharmi sleeves on the Young Cards website. All of this stuff is up for sale on the Young Cards website. The Dragon Ruler playmat, I think, is only 33 bucks, which I think is pretty cool for a YCS exclusive playmat. They've got all that and a lot more exclusive stuff from the OCG, which is pretty hard to come by over here. So feel free to check out their store in the comment section down below or in the description box. Use Josh10 for a discount and to support the channel a little bit. Without further ado, thanks to Young Cards for sponsoring today's video and the channel moving forward. Hope you guys enjoy that stuff. Now let's get back to the award ceremony. Even more important, arguably, at least in my opinion, is the category most fun deck to play against in TCG in 2025. I do think this is an aspect that is often overlooked when we look at game balancing and game design in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that it is a two-player game, and some decks are certainly more fun to play against than others. So this was a category I wanted to include this year. And at 7.9% in third place, most fun deck to play against in 2025 was Blue Eyes Primite. appears for the first time, and I think this is also understandable. You know, it came out at a time where a lot of decks in the format, I mean, mainly Beansmith Ryziel or Mitsurugi Ryziel or Malice, were doing some pretty crazy things when they went first. From my perspective, I understand this. I don't think Blue Eyes is the most interesting deck to play against, but at the same time, just if you look at the power level that you're facing compared to some of the other decks at the time, I was happy every time I lost a dice roll and then my opponent was playing Blue Eyes instead of normal summoning Dormouse or normal summoning Ice Ryziel, right? So it's like, it's not the most fun deck to play against in the year, but it didn't win that award either. It's just third place, but I can see where people are coming from with this one. In second place, 12%, we have Pure Yummy. Pure Yummy, a deck that also released alongside Draco Tail and K9. Widely considered as a deck that, you know, did have strong combos and did play a lot of non-engine, but the end board was relatively fair and manageable. People started playing some board breakers again for it. You know, cards like Super Poly or Dark Ruler made its way back into the format to combat Pure Yummy, and all things considered, if you compare it to some of the things that other decks are doing in the format, I can see why people think it's a little more fun to play against than when people make, for example, the Mitsurugi Yummy board, which is both boards combined. So Pure Yummy wins second place of most fun deck to play against. And first place, once again, to no one's surprise, 30%, by the way, is Draco Tail. Draco Tail, by far the most fun deck to play against. And once again, 2 out of 3 Justice Hunters archetypes making it onto the podium here in most fun deck to play against in TCG 2025. Maybe some foreshadowing, because I also asked the question of what your favorite side set was later down the line. But yeah, Draco Tail not only wins most fun deck to play, but also most fun deck to play against in 2025. Most powerful new archetype in 2025, which is different than most dominant deck because this is only the raw archetype. Just one singular archetype that came out this year. Which one's the most powerful? Third place, we got Yummy. Of course, this takes into consideration that it was playable as a pure deck, but it was also a powerful engine in other decks like Mitsurugi Yummy or whatever. So Yummy takes third place in most powerful archetype. Second place is K9, which funnily enough isn't even an archetype that really works as its own deck. I mean, people have messed around with pure K9, but it hasn't really found much success. But of course, once this came out, there was a lot of hybrid versions that were really, really strong, whether it's Crystron K9, Vanquish Soul K9, or even more niche stuff like Sulfur-Cord K9. Mitsurugi K9 was even a deck. There was a lot of decks that used the K9 engine, and of course, Izuna even being a generically useful hand trap. I think it is no surprise that K9 finds itself in second place here in most powerful new archetype in 2025. Mitsurugi takes first place uncontested, more than 3 times the votes than second place as the most powerful new archetype in 2025. For context, because I see some people in chat asking right now, Malice was not in this question because Malice released in 2024. That's why I made a difference between the archetypes that were released in 25 and just the decks that were dominant. Because of course, a deck that came out in 2024 can still be dominant in 2025, but it is not a new archetype from this year. So this is just the new archetypes. This does not take into consideration the decks that people played with these cards or whatever. This is just raw which archetype was the best. Mitsurugi wins this one, and I think it's hard to argue with that. Even pure Mitsurugi was a strong deck, but similar to K9 and Yummy, all of these 3 archetypes have one thing in common, which is that they go with a lot of other strategies, and they can be paired, they have synergies, they have very little restrictions as well, which is also a topic of this year. Therefore, these are the most powerful. Other question, what, not the most powerful, but what was your favorite new archetype in 2025? Which one did you think was the most fun? And Yummy also appears here in third place, 12%. People really like Yummy. You know, people might have a problem with the power level of some of the Yummy hybrids, but Yummy itself is a well-received archetype, so it lands a third place in this category. And Mitsurugi also appears. You know, Mitsurugi, despite all of its powers and all of its flaws in terms of no restrictions and stuff like that, or being way too splashable, people still really like the idea behind it, and I can understand it. I mean, I felt the same way. I loved the pure Mitsurugi deck. It is a fun deck to play for sure. And of course, I mean, sometimes playing these powerful decks is definitely just fun. So Mitsurugi definitely appears in the most fun favorite new archetypes in 2025. but it can't beat Dracotail. I feel like Dracotail is probably the most successful new archetype in 2025, just in terms of its design and how people have received it. You know, I feel like it just kind of hit the sweet spot between it was strong, you know, it was meta viable. It wasn't like something that you thought was fun but never playable, but it was actually a good deck. But it felt different than a lot of other decks this year because it wasn't as combo heavy, which I feel like it shows that there is a demand for these types of archetypes in the Yu-Gi-Oh community as well. So Dracotail takes most fun new archetype in 2025 down as well. Opposite side of the spectrum, what was the weakest new archetype in 2025? RB lands a solid third place. 15% of people said RB is the weakest new archetype in 2025. I'm gonna be honest with you, I made fun of RBs at certain times, but at the same time, I also feel like RB had some pretty big footsteps to follow, which was that it was the first TCG exclusive archetype after Mitsurugi, which is a pretty hard task, you know? I've seen some RB decks, and you know what? I've seen worse. I have seen worse. It's not that bad. It's not great either, but it's not that bad. But it didn't win the category. I mean, there's another over here with 47%. So RB honestly gets away kind of fine here. 15% of people said RB is the weakest archetype in 2025, but there is more. In second place, we have Doom Z, which is an archetype whose lore is not finished yet. So this one's up in the air. Maybe this one rises to the top in 2026. Who can say? I think some of their cards are actually quite good, but it just isn't quite finished yet, is how I feel about it. But 16% of people said this is the weakest archetype in 2025, which, I mean, so far, fair enough. I haven't really seen people do anything with Doomsy, even less than RB. Like, I've seen people try to make RB work and bring it to YCSs, and it didn't even look that bad. Doomsy, I've basically seen no one do anything with so far. So I guess we'll have to wait for more Doomsy support. This could change in 2026, of course. Maybe at the end of 2026, we're going to look back at this and say, oh, how foolish we were, and maybe Doomsy is the next most broken archetype. But the winner of this category, by far, Argo Stars. 47.5% said Argo Stars is the weakest new archetype in 2025. And this just makes me sad because I was looking at the Argo Stars cards and I thought they looked so fun. At the same time, this is not the fun category. This is the weakest category. Concept behind this deck was very cool. Unfortunately, the concept is also very flawed because, you know, revolving around continuous traps that jump in and out of the spell trap zone. It turns out that that's just a little bit too slow. And even though the idea behind it I thought was kind of cool, in practice, it just hasn't really taken off. And also in parts that, like, I feel like Odeon just gave people a way to do this, but better, right? Like, Odeon kind of does the same thing, but with more efficient and more powerful cards. So I've seen some people try them together, actually. But for the most part, like, if you want this sort of deck, this sort of playstyle, I think Odeon was just a deck that came out and then just did that for you and was a little bit better. So yeah, Argo Stars takes weakest new archetype in 2025. Unfortunately, when I read those cards for the first time, I still remember I was hopeful and I thought it was a cool idea, but it didn't quite take off. On the other side, we have the most powerful support in 2025. And no, most powerful support means legacy support for an already existing archetype. 2 questions ago, we had the most powerful completely new archetype, but now we're looking at which older deck has received the strongest new card. And in third place, we have the Blue Eyes support from the structure deck, which of course catapulted Blue Eyes alongside the Primite cards from a basically not even existent strategy in the metagame to a at least tier 2 contender. For a while, it was definitely considered one of the, like, let's say top 5 decks in the format, which was a pretty significant buff from what it was beforehand. So Blue Eyes makes its way into top 3 most powerful legacy support. In second place, we have Lunalight, which is a deck that, you know, previously had basically seen 0 play ever as a pure deck. I mean, people are going to say, what about Lunalight Orchist or whatever in 2019? It was never a Lunalight deck. You know, people just used like Lunalight Tiger and Yellow Martin and Kaleido Chick as like a package to spam bodies and rank 4s and so on. With this support, with Liger Dancer and Perfume Dancer and some others, pure Lunalight was a deck, and it even made it to like the top cut of multiple YCSs. Didn't win one as far as I know, but still, I mean, even until now, it is a viable strategy, and it has to be, sometimes has to be respected when you build your deck. And as soon as people start disrespecting Lunalight in deck building, they don't have outs to the towers, you gotta think about playing Lunalight again, and it could be taking down a YCS at any point if people don't play enough outs to it. So yeah, Lunalight, pretty powerful legacy support. In first place, 45.9% said Vanquish Soul Holy Sue, which is interesting. I mean, it's really Holy Sue. There is also Vanquish Soul Start and Vanquish Soul Rocks, but in reality, it's just Holy Sue. You know, it's Holy Sue and the other two. I mean, literally this one card. I mean, to be fair, Vanquish Soul Start also made a pretty big impact on the deck because Madlove was now a starter. That was also a really big deal. But yeah, it's crazy how sometimes literally the introduction of one or two cards, at three if you want to count Vanquish Soul Rocks, can really like snowball or can really have such a huge impact. Sometimes they try to make something good with so many cards and it doesn't work, and sometimes they all it takes is one Vanquish Soul Holy Sue that was such a perfect introduction to the archetype, and it fixed so many problems that the deck had, and there you go. Vanquish Soul takes most powerful legacy support by a landslide. But that doesn't answer the question of which support you actually liked the most. Which was your favorite legacy support in 2025? And in third place, once again, we have Blue Eyes. I mean, people really liked Blue Eyes when it came out. That was a very, very popular deck. You know, Blue Eyes, Anime, Bat Chest, but also we saw it earlier. Blue Eyes was on the list of people's decks that they liked to play against. You know, it felt fairer than what other decks were doing, and so it entering the metagame definitely felt like a breath of fresh air. And so Blue Eyes takes third place in favorite legacy support as well. 10.45% gives a second place to Sky Striker. The first time that this appears in this ranking at all, didn't really have as much of an impact on the metagame as I would have hoped for personally as well, but it certainly was on my list of favorite legacy support for the year as well. I'm not sure if I would have voted for it in this one over others, but I really enjoyed the Sky Striker support in Duelist Advance. It was a deck I tried. It was a deck I brought to tournaments. I enjoyed it a lot. The playstyle was cool. It gets second place here, favorite support in 2025. First place, 14.48%, is also Vanquish Soul. This is interesting because previously we saw a lot of the decks that people perceived as the most powerful not always appear and also their favorite, right? Like, it's like you see a deck that is very dominant or very powerful, and then you often don't see it appear in the favorite category. In the case of Vanquish Soul, it just wins both. It wins most powerful and favorite because people really liked Vanquish Soul as a deck, even though it was very powerful. So yeah, Vanquish Soul, Holy Sue, and the other two take favorite legacy support in 2025 as well. And now we have a sad category. This one hurt me to my core. What was the most disappointing legacy support in 2025? You know, which archetype got you really excited when you heard that it would get support, but then it just disappointed you in some way? Maybe because it wasn't strong enough, maybe because it played in a way that you didn't expect it to play, or you didn't like it didn't really feel like the deck anymore, and so on and so forth. And so in third place here, we have Arcana Force. Actually, I guess you can see it in multiple ways. It didn't really have any impact, but all I've seen from Arcana Force is that it ended up giving, I think, the deck like a new FTK, which I guess even fans of Arcana Force, if there are any out there, didn't really like that much. But I think most likely it's just because it didn't really have any meta impact other than ruining the premiere event, the sneak preview, right? Like at sneak, I remember, what was it? There was one of them, the sun. I think the sun was broken at sneak. That's the only impact I remember from Arcana Force personally. But yeah, and now the ones that really hurt me personally. 10% second place, Dragon Ruler. Yeah, this one hurt when I saw. This reminded me, when I looked at the results, this reminded me of how much I was disappointed as well by this. I mean, Dragon Rulers, as one of the most powerful decks in Yu-Gi-Oh's history from 2013 and 14, got legacy support, and honestly, the cards read really cool. The deck even feels like Dragon Ruler again. Unfortunately, they just weren't powerful enough, and if anything, it was only viable when people were doing Christia locks with it, in the TCG at least. I mean, Genesis is a different topic, but for the most part, if people played it in the TCG, it was only because you could make Chasma and then send Christia on your turn and revive it on the opponent's turn. And that was really sad to see as someone who had high hopes in Dragon Rulers, because this is one of my favorite decks of all time. And the legacy support, unfortunately, didn't deliver, which is exactly the same as Necros, which takes first place at 16.3%. Once again, it was meant to be such a good year for me, dude. These were two of my favorite archetypes of all time. And then Necros just, you know, I mean, to be fair, in Necros's defense, it's not the best year for Necros to receive support when Drolin Lockbird is basically one of the most played Yu-Gi-Oh cards in general. It was never a good time for Necros to receive support this year. However, even for that, the cards were unfortunately not good enough to make the deck meta, which is kind of surprising because, and this is interesting because both for Necros and both for Dragon Rulers, I don't think the cards necessarily are bad. I can't even necessarily pinpoint what the problem is with those cards, because Emilia and Avance are pretty good starters for Necros, right? Like, those are good cards. And also, like, Chasma and Eclipse and Disaster, like, it's all, they got solid cards. I wasn't really unhappy when I read the support. Maybe it's just that the concept of those decks hasn't aged super well. Maybe that's just the problem. It is what it is, but yes, I definitely, I personally agree. I don't know which one I was more disappointed by those two, because both of those are some of my favorite decks of all time, and they didn't quite get to shine. I think Necros is the more disappointing one, because I played both of those decks in Genesis, and Dragon Ruler was at least better there. So I think Necros was more disappointing to me. Because I tried Necros in Genesis, and it wasn't that bad, but it also was way worse than Dragon Ruler, so... Alright, and now, most powerful individual card released in TCG 2025. I wonder which card received 71% of the votes. Yeah, no, the more interesting question is which card got third and second place, because first place, you know, it was a wash. Vanquish Soul Holy Sue wins third place with 9%. K917 Ripper wins second place with 9.4%, only barely in front of Holy Sue. And Habakiri wins first place. That's the to no one's surprise, the card that basically says do everything you want in the realm of Yu-Gi-Oh wins first place of most powerful individual card in 2025. And honestly, I think leaving behind Ripper and Holy Sue so far behind it is crazy. Those are two very powerful cards in second and third place here. But Habakiri, uncontested, I think this is the highest result in the entire survey, takes most powerful card released in 2025. But it's more than 7 times second place, yeah. Oh, man. All right. What was your favorite card design in 2025? This was a very interesting question to me, and there was a lot of different answers for this one, but there's a couple ones that people said a decent amount more often than others. Of course, favorite card design can mean a lot of things. It can mean like you just love that card because it's your favorite archetype or whatever. But for the most part, what was meant by it was which card just do you think has like the perfect like balancing, but also it's a good card, but it also has some cool gameplay loop attached to it, or the gameplay it provides is cool or fun or whatever. So that's what I was trying to find out with this question of like which card is something that people just enjoyed playing. Which card do you enjoy having around in the game? 7.46% is K2 Draco Tail. And I can only assume that that is because the card has one of the things that people are talking about more and more often in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, which is that people want cards that are useful going first because no one enjoys drawing dead cards when they start. But they really want cards with bonus effects when they go second, because that is one of the approaches to fix some of Yu-Gi-Oh's issues with the player going first is so favored to win, is when cards do something, but then they do more for the player going second. And this, I think, is why K2 Draco Tail ends up on here, which is, I think it's just because people really enjoyed Draco Tail, but K2 Draco Tail in particular, I think, is considered a well-designed card because it helps the player going second more. So it ends up in third place. In second place, we have Draco Tail 5 mana. A very similar concept between these two. I mean, Draco Tail 5 mana being an engine card, but also a hand trap, is a concept that not everyone likes, but a lot of people do. And so it's between K2 and 5 mana here. Both of them are third and second place in terms of the most well-designed card in 2025. First place is the Fallen and the Virtuous, which is not quite a Draco Tail card, even though it was played in Draco Tail. And I can get behind this one. I think this one is interesting. It's a really fun card because if you really narrow it down, or if you really look at it, it's a very simple design. It's just like destroy one card on the field, right? And I'm surprised with how well this card has managed to make its way into even the most powerful format, which is Advanced Constructed. I mean, I was expecting the card to be everywhere in Genesis if they didn't point it so high. But even in Advanced Constructed, this card made its way into decks, you know? So this card is just simple. It's removal. It gives you some follow-up. It doesn't do any crazy one-card combos. It doesn't do anything super broken or powerful, but it's just a simple but efficient card. And I can appreciate that design, honestly. I think that's interesting. It's not the one I would have personally picked. I think K2 Draco Tail is a strong answer, or 5 mana. Honestly, I think I considered Holy Sue as well, but I think Holy Sue is just a little bit too powerful. I think 5 mana is more in line of what I would consider a healthy in-engine hand trap. But no, Fallen at the Virtuous takes it all. It wouldn't have been my number one guess, but I can see why. I can see where people are coming from with this one. It's a pretty well-balanced card. It's a card that sees a lot of play, but I would not consider it too powerful or too broken or anything like that. It's a pretty solid one. Those were your top 3 most well-designed cards in the TCG in 2025. On the opposite side of the spectrum, I mean, the previous voting was very close. This one is not as close. What was the worst designed card in 2025? In third place, we have Lunalight Liger Dancer. I mean, people hate those unaffected towers, that win condition. It's a very polarizing one. People hate staring down a Liger Dancer and not having an out in their deck. So I can also see where people are coming from with this one, but it does get outclassed by second and first in this category. And second place is actually, that would have been my number one choice. I hated when they made K9 Ripper, but K9 Ripper takes only second place in worst designed card in 2025. I mean, the concept behind why this card is hated, I think, is something that we've talked about enough. The fact that they decided to make a generic engine that doesn't have any sort of locks on it in K9, and then they gave it a generic rank 5 to negate any hand trap any monster hand trap, Nibiru, Ash, Droll, whatever, and just keep comboing. You know, it enables so many combo decks from that point on, you know, K9 Crystron, K9 Vanquish Soul, K9 Mitsurugi, K9 Sulfur Cord, you name it. We've talked about it before. All of that is only made possible by K9 Ripper. And in first place, it is Habakiri once again, takes another card design award, but it's the worst design award, goes to Habakiri. Funnily, and this is not the one I would have picked, but I can see where people are coming from. I mean, it won 70% of the most powerful cards, so I can see where people are coming from. This card is definitely overtuned, way overtuned. At the same time, I would have picked cards like K9 Ripper or Star Ryzel or whatever, because I think cards that just negate hand traps or punish hand traps are even worse. But that's why I'm asking the community, and I'm not just putting my own thingies on here. 35% said Habakiri is the worst designed card in the TCG in 2025. I can see where you're coming from. I mean, there's other definitely honorable mentions, but those 3, it's interesting, right? Because these 3 that won here are 3 separate things, right? This is an end board piece that is almost impossible to beat, which people also don't like. This is basically a combo enabler that lets you play through hand traps and make very powerful boards, ignoring your opponent's interactions. And this is just one of the most powerful starters in the game, right? So in some ways, I think this is a very fitting outcome because we have one of each of these categories, right? Like we have the broken starter, the hand trap negation, and the broken end board piece. All 3 are things that if they are too powerful, they can definitely be problematic. And I think that's what this category showcases really well. So the reality is, like, you should balance all 3 of these kinds of cards properly, right? The end board pieces shouldn't be too broken. The cards that negate hand traps shouldn't be too powerful. And the starters slash combo enablers also should be toned down a little bit. That's what this category is telling us, right? And now we're moving to some more product related and just decisions that affected the game, but not the cards themselves categories, right? We're through with some of the card designs, but now we're asking about, you know, product and other stuff, rule changes, and all this good stuff that happened in 2025. And the first question I asked was, what is the favorite core booster set released in TCG 2025? Of course, there's 4 options, and they were really close to each other. So I'm just going to show you the results, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit of why this might be so close. In 4th place, we have Supreme Darkness, which gets last place. In 3rd place, we have Doom of Dimensions, 24%. 24.8% we have Alliance Insight, and then 27.4% is Duelists Advance. Now, keep in mind, core booster sets excludes Justice Hunters and so on and so forth. This does not include Justice Hunters. Justice Hunters is not a core booster set. The 4 core booster sets we got this year are Supreme Darkness, Doom of Dimension, Alliance Insight, and Duelist Advance. Duelist Advance wins, which is the set that gave us some of the other cards that won some other awards were in Duelist Advance. You know, we got Holy Sue in there, we got the Sky Striker support, and so those were some that won some of the other, you know, favorite archetype awards and stuff. So I think that's why this one is considered to be one of the better sets for people. And the other 3 are basically all the same. My personal least favorite would have been Alliance Insight, because it gave us Star Ryziel and the Adignister stuff and March Hare, which kind of like blew Ryziel and Malice out of proportion, and Habakiri. So I'm actually surprised that Alliance Insight is holding up so well. But at the same time, right? At the same time, you have to factor in other things as well, because Alliance Insight, I think arguably out of those 4 was probably the best one to open, right? Because it had more hits than the others. Maybe it's between Alliance Insight and Duelist Advance, honestly. So in that sense, I think it makes sense that those 2 are the highest voted, because those are the 2 that you could actually open and pull some good stuff from. You know, this is, I think, what people remember as well at the end of a year, is like, how often did I open those packs and pull something good? And you definitely pulled better cards in Duelist Advance and Alliance Insight than you did in Supreme Darkness and Doom of Dimensions. In Duelist Advance, you had Sky Striker A0 and Lemnis Gate, which even if you didn't play Sky Striker, they were not that hard to move. Supreme Darkness had Mitsurugi Ritual, which was good in hindsight, yeah. Doom of Dimensions had Marshmallow and Noroi. I think the more interesting takeaway from this is that there's no set this year that really stands out, right? There's no absolutely phenomenal set that we got this year in terms of the core booster sets. The core booster sets all feel like kind of average, which ties into a discussion that, of course, has been had in the Yu-Gi-Oh community in recent weeks and months, and even the entire year, of like, product should be better, right? Like, there's some of the core booster sets aren't as good as especially vendors would like them to be. And I mean, the players feel this too when you look back, and like some of the products aren't worth much anymore, or they weren't that great to open. And I think that's what leads to a result that is so close to each other. Supreme Darkness had Meowls. Oh yeah, Meowls too, yeah. Meowls is the least hype out of the 3 Charmies, but that is a decent pull. Especially, once again, in hindsight, it became a lot better over the course of the year, and then, yeah. They need a complete rework. I mean, this is a topic for 2026, of course. What we're doing right now is just recapping this year, but of course, maybe the introduction of frame breaks is a way to change our perception of core sets in the future. I guess this is something interesting to look back in, like, in a year from now. Has this changed, or has it stayed the same? Because I think it is safe to say that at the moment, it is hard to look back at core booster sets and really be like, yeah, this one was amazing, right? You can't do this for any of these, right? Like, some of them were slightly more impactful on the meta than others. Some of them maybe had 1 or 2 chase cards more than the others, but really amazing, I wouldn't say is the right term for any of these, right? So, yeah. Which worst core booster set, kind of the same. Maybe I could have put these 2 in one question, but funnily enough, this one is not as close to each other, but Duelist Advance was voted as the worst core booster set. Supreme Darkness, second worst. Duelist Advance was voted the least as the worst. So people voted Alliance Insight as the worst. I think I could have phrased this question a little bit better. This one might be on me, because I think what Alliance Insight wasn't the worst in terms of the cards that were in there, right? Like, because it had the Adignister stuff, it had Habakiri. The only way I can explain this is people liked it the least, because it gave them like March here, Star Ryziel, Habakiri, and the Adignisters. I really can't see it being the worst in terms of the cards. I think it's arguably the strongest core booster set, right? Like, I think it had the strongest cards, but I think that's why people voted it the worst. Do you see where I'm coming from? I should have phrased this question better. That one's on me. I'm not entirely sure how to interpret this one. Like, it should have been, what was your least favorite core booster set? You know, because it had like the worst designs or whatever, right? But anyways, 29% voted Alliance Insight as the worst core booster set, but I'm not entirely sure what everyone's reasoning was on this one. And now we're looking at side sets. What was your favorite side set in the year 2025? 16.8% said the Chronicles deck, the Fallen and the Virtuous, which was a pretty successful product, even though it only gave us, what is it? It was the Fallen and the Virtuous, the Fusion Monster. Despite that, it had a lot of good reprints. It was an all foil set. It had alt arts. It had, not every structure deck had the same cards in it, right? There was a promo that was changing, and you could pull Starlight versions of the promos and the alt arts, and that was kind of exciting. It was a really good product all around. I mean, we've been waiting for more structure decks, and I think that's also an interesting takeaway for 2025. I think in 2024 we got no structure decks, and in 2025 we got two of them. And even though the Blue Eye structure, spoilers, doesn't appear in this, both of those were really well received this year. Like, the structure decks were really a product that was missing in 2024. I think all of 24 we got no structure decks, and people were really missing them. People were missing structure decks, and in 2025 they came back swinging. Chronicles deck was really well received. Second place was Quarter Century Stampede. People really liked the Rarity Collection concept. I mean, this one especially, I think, went one step further than previous Rarity Collections by including all of the alternative artworks. Whether you're a fan of them or not, they were definitely good pulls. They were chase cards. The QCR exclusive alt arts, you know, the Bellstar and the Biru, made this product a lot better. And of course, this is something that we're hoping is going to make Rarity Collection 5 even better when we get the frame breaks in it. And then Justice Hunters sweeps this category. I mean, we've seen it earlier. This is not much of a surprise considering how well received archetypes like Dracotail and Yummy were. Even though Canine Ripper also was in this set, and that one got a couple of negative awards. But at the same time, you know, it was a very successful set. Every archetype from it was strong. There was no like bad pulls really. Like, the worst pull in this set, the worst ultra rare, was Canine Lupus, which wasn't bad because you couldn't use it. It was just a bad pull because you only needed one, and that's why it wasn't expensive. And as a result, funnily enough, because all of the ultra rares were good, none of them actually was insanely expensive. Like, even Izuna, which is a generic hand trap 3 of in most decks that use it, I think it was kind of expensive in the beginning, but it went down over time. Like, it just showed that if all the ultra rares are good quality, that is good for the community because the value of the cards, it kind of spreads out. You know, of course, Izuna was more expensive than some of the others, but it wasn't the 100 euro card that people were afraid it was going to be because the quality of the product was high, because there was enough chase cards in it. Izuna didn't end up being that expensive. And so, yeah, product has gotten a little bit better this year in terms of the side sets. The core sets still have some problems, but we've seen some concepts. And if they expand further on these concepts, you know, if they make the pull rates better, if they make the rarity distribution more accurate, you know, if the cards have similar qualities within the ultra rare slot, if not like one ultra rare is completely useless and the other one is completely broken, then I think we can see product being more successful, hopefully. On the other hand, what was your least favorite or worst side set or product released in the TCG in 2025? And 18.9% said Phantom Revenge, which is very recent set, of course. And I think it's hard to argue with this one. I mean, you can look at this set from a balancing aspect and say like, hey, these archetypes are not too weak. They are just not as broken as some of the others. You know, I would argue, and I've said this in the past, that some Phantom Revenge archetypes are actually kind of well designed. It's just that they aren't like other archetypes that are too powerful. But at the same time, from a product perspective, that doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter that these archetypes are well designed. You know, it's just a matter of fact that none of the three archetypes are meta viable at the moment. And even if people like some of these cards, you just won't get a whole lot of value out of this because Yu-Gi-Oh! At the moment is mainly a game that is, of course, being played. And the player base, the demand of like how good a card or deck is, it just dictates the demand for it. And at the moment, the Phantom Revenge archetypes simply don't have much, which further showcases the need for some more like fancy chase cards. You know, maybe this set would have been better if there was frame breaks in it. Just saying, you know, maybe it would still be worth opening or fun to open or collectors would open it if this set had frame breaks of some cards, you know? Think about that. You know, that would mean that the products are not only dependent on every single deck being top tier meta for it to be good. You know, you could probably make good product without making every card broken. Wouldn't that be awesome? Anyways, Phantom Revenge, as a result of not having anything chase worthy and nothing meta relevant, is considered one of the worst products of 2025. Followed by Maze of the Master. I mean, yeah, this set gave us Odeon, but that's it, right? That's weird. I mean, I don't think it was that crazy of a set. I think in hindsight, it was just okay, right? It gave us Man. Tachyon was in it as well. Yeah, I don't know. It's the community that voted on it. I think it's just that Odeon, despite being a solid deck, isn't like a community favorite. The reality was, right, if you opened a box of Maze of the Master and you didn't get 7th Tachyon, I think you negged pretty hard. For the most part. Even if you pulled an Odeon card, right? This is about products. This is not about, like, do you like Odeon or not, right? This is like, how was this as a product for the community? Did you like opening this? Do you think it was worth opening? Do you think it was worth purchasing? Do you like what it made, what it did to the format, right? And so it's a combination of all of those factors. And so even if Odeon is a playable deck in the format, that doesn't necessarily mean that the product it comes from was good. So it's like this set had 7th Tachyon, which was by far the most expensive card, which, by the way, could also be something that people dislike about this set, right? Because 7th Tachyon was hella expensive because it was really the only big chase card in this pack. The execution on how 7th Tachyon was released is maybe also something that people dislike, even though the card is good. So I think look at it from that perspective, maybe. Maybe that helps. But that's what I could imagine. Mega Pack 2025 takes first place in this category. I think the Mega Packs have been struggling since they've introduced rarity collections. You know, people just want faster reprints, and I guess people are questioning in general the necessity of the Mega Pack because it always releases relatively late in the year, and ideally people want the reprints faster. If the cards have already been reprinted, then I guess it takes away from the Mega Pack. But they also could do a little bit better with it if they like work on pull rates and don't make it such a big set with where it's basically impossible to pull. And then also even the fact that like Starlights are nice, but it felt kind of awkward because the collector's market for Yu-Gi-Oh is a whole different topic, I guess. But then like it's kind of weird that like some Starlights, you look at a Starlight and you have no idea. This card could be worth 20 cents or it could be worth like $500, depending on where it's from, right? No idea. But Mega Pack, yeah, with rarity collections, I feel like maybe Mega Packs are just going to be obsolete at some point. If they just do proper reprinting across the year, spaced out properly, then why would we need this one huge set at the end of the year? All right, Game Balance. Best Forbidden and Limited List update in the TCG in 2025. Now, of course, this is going to add up to 100% because we only had 3. So we had 3 ban lists in 2025. We had an April ban list. We had a, I believe it was September or August, the one with Paradise Smasher and Vanquish Soul hits. And then we had the post YCS Anaheim one, basically. In third place, we have the September ban list, the least favorite one of people, which was the one that banned Paradise Smasher. It hit Take Your Soul and Raisin and did some other things to Malice and Ryziel. For the most part, I think this is regarded to as one of the weaker ban lists because while it did hit Paradise Smasher, which was very necessary, I think a large portion of the community didn't enjoy how Raisin and Stake Your Soul were murdered just to justify releasing K9, basically. But yeah, and also what happened after, right? Like, I think the two main things from this ban list is that Vanquish Soul suffered for the sins of K9, and that a lot of stuff was left untouched, which was then obvious in YCS Anaheim, where basically it was all floodgates from start to finish. In second place, we have the April ban list, the first ban list of the year, which gave us a couple of Malice and Ryziel hits. Of course, it basically came out in the middle of Malice and Ryziel format. It gave us Shifter to 1, which was pretty cool. Semi-limited a bunch of the Malice and Ryziel cards. Of course, it didn't really hurt Malice or Ryziel because they got support in Alliance Insight, and Mitsurugi Ryziel was just waiting to replace Fiendsmith Ryziel and stuff like that. And of course, with March here and the Adignister stuff coming out, Malice didn't really care about the hits, but it was a pretty big list. I think it also was the one that banned Dweller, right? It was a pretty good one. I'm surprised this number isn't higher, honestly, but the October Forbidden Limited list that banned all of the floodgates takes first place, 64.51%. I think this was a no-brainer. I would have picked this one so far. So not just because it banned the floodgates. The reason why I like this one so much personally as well is because it exhibited a relatively fast response to a problem, which is something that, I mean, it should be common sense, I suppose, is something you could say. But at the same time, it is not something we see all the time with ban list decisions. You know, oftentimes they are way too late and completely out of touch. That definitely happens. But this one was like basically, you know, YCS Anaheim happened. There was a big problem. People started complaining about it and they responded. And that was good. We should get this more often, of course. We should have maybe even gotten this stuff in advance, way in advance. But, you know, we'll take it. It's definitely the best one this year, for sure. So yeah, it wins this category. And then I asked you, if you had to designate one card to get banned in the TCG in 2025 that didn't get banned, which one would you pick? 11.08% said Dimension Shifter. Of course, this card lingering around, no pun intended, at 1 is really annoying. You know, the fact that especially this year there was a bunch of decks again that could just play the one of Shifter. You know, Malice, Pure Mitsu could play it. The Primite deck that won YCS Lil played it. There's a lot of decks that can play one copy of Shifter, and so even if it's at 1, it's still gonna happen to you a bunch of times. So Dimension Shifter, very frustrating card to be at 1. In second place, 12.8% is Herald of the Arclight, is a very requested ban at the moment because, of course, this card is responsible not only for Yami being so strong, but also just the bridge between Yami and Mitsurugi. So this card on its own enables the most powerful deck of the format, basically, or one of the most powerful decks of the format is possible because of this card. It's an Omni Negate and it's a Floodgate. And I guess it also probably plays into this decision is that it's a Floodgate against the most loved deck of the format, which is Draco Tail. So yeah, people want Herald gone. I think this is a very likely hit on the next ban list. I would be a little shocked if this didn't happen. But of course, once again, we are lagging behind a little bit on this one. And then Droll and Lockbird, most hated card in the game at the moment, probably. The main difference, I think, between Droll and Shifter is that Droll is in every deck, not just some decks. And Droll is also at 3. And Shifter is at 1. So even though, you know, maybe Shifter is the more toxic card even, the fact that Droll is in every deck and is at 3 just means you face it so much more often. And people are getting sick and tired of Droll and Lockbird. I mean, Lingering Floodgate, it's not very fun to play with, not very fun to play against. Very little agency in the card. The TCG, luckily, doesn't have to deal with Max C, but it feels like Droll and Lockbird is like the next big thing that, like, we really need to think about whether this card is worth keeping around. Because it does keep a lot of powerful stuff in check, but at the same time, that stuff should probably not exist to begin with. So Droll kind of like existing as a Band-Aid fix doesn't really feel the most healthy card design. But yeah, people want Droll and Lockbird banned. At least 16.98% of the people that responded to this said it was the one card they would have banned if they could have. Other topics. We had a new time rule in 2025 in the TCG. Of course, they added 5 minutes to the clock. It went from 45 to 50 minutes. And if you go to time now, instead of comparing life points and seeing who's up a game, or maybe it's a draw or whatever, now it is a double loss if you go to time. This is how people felt about it. We had overall, honestly, relatively positive split. I would say over half of the people answered that it was somewhat positive or very positive. Around a quarter of responses were neutral, and only about, let me do some quick math, 23.5%, roughly 23.6% said somewhat negative or very negative about the new time rules. It's a polarizing topic. I think it's good to see that a majority of the community is positive or at least neutral on it. I would have said somewhat positive, because I think it is a step in the right direction from the previous time rules. That's my main takeaway from it so far. It's like, it's not perfect, it's got problems. You know, sometimes people have to scoop too early because it doesn't incentivize long and grindy games. Sure, that does happen. And getting a double loss, I'm sure, feels very, very bad. At the same time, you know, I think if you compare it to what we had beforehand, I just think it's hard for it to be worse than that. What I take away from this is I think overall it's a step in the right direction. I don't think the job is done. I think they should take a look at this again in maybe a year, maybe reflect on how things have been going, and then iterate on it again. I really hope that that's something that they're gonna do, but we'll see about that. So far, the community is feeling okay about it on average, I would say. I mean, people are just gonna get used to it more and more, and so I could see this being more positive in the future, but I'm still kind of like, I'm somewhat positive on it, but I'm hoping for another update that, you know, irons out some of the details in the future. New price support is also something that happened in the year 2025, mainly for YCSs. The price support was significantly improved by adding stamped cards, as well as the YCS dice and some other fancier things. Of course, Yu-Gi-Oh is a game that, as like, it's hard to argue that the price support was pretty mediocre slash bad before 2025, but we did get some upgrades. So how did people feel about that? Look, no one sees this as a negative change, right? Like, basically no one. There was 3.96% who said somewhat negative, and then 1.4% said very negative, but 27.6% said very positive, 38.7% said somewhat positive, and 28% said neutral. So overall, a pretty positive response for the new price support, way more positive than the new time rules, which is great to see. I'm happy that the Yu-Gi-Oh community is happy with the new price support. Especially, I think one of the biggest deals is not even the effect veiler for top 16, but also just the stuff that people get for making day 2. It feels like more of an incentive to play day 2, to reach day 2, and then also keep playing if you reach day 2, even if you can't make top 8 anymore. Like, try to get that card trooper, try to get that effect veiler. I think it's pretty cool. Once again, I would have said somewhat positive on this, because I do think there is stuff to improve on this concept. I think we could have picked better cards. Especially now with the frame breaks being introduced, I'm wondering if maybe that's an option for the future. You know, like, what if the card, instead of just having a stamp, it's cool, but it's in comparison to an overframe card, it feels a little more lazy, right? Like, what if top 16 at a YCS gives you an overframe effect veiler instead of a stamped effect veiler? You know, even though it is just as rare, I think it would have been worth more. And I think since for them, it doesn't really cost them anything to print a little bit of cardboard, I think it could be improved even further. But of course, this is a positive change in my opinion. The card pool should be a little bit better. You know, Effect Veiler and Card Trooper, you could pick better cards. And then once again, now with frame break technology and everything, that is something I'm hoping for in the future. So there's room for improvement, but it's a pretty good change. Genesis format is another big thing that happened in 2025. So how did people feel about the introduction of Genesis format? How excited is the community about this new format? And the answer is very excited. This is almost the same numbers as the price support in terms of the positivity. Almost half of the people that responded to this survey, which is thousands, said very positive that Genesis format was introduced. Almost 28% said somewhat positive. 16% are kind of neutral. I suppose those are just people who don't really bother playing Genesis or don't care that much about it, which is also fine. You know, if you just want to keep playing Advanced Constructed, that is also completely up to you. And then like 4% said somewhat negative and 2% said very negative. I assume those are just people that actually tried Genesis and just, you know, didn't like it, or maybe are afraid that Genesis could take away player base from the TCG, like, you know, splitting the player base into 2 parts and they don't feel good about that, which is, you know, maybe a valid concern. I haven't really, I guess we'll have to wait and see if that's something that could or could not happen. But for the most part, or it's Pendulum players. For the most part, it is a very, very well-received format. I can only attest to that. I personally love Genesis format. I've participated in the YCS tournament for Genesis on the Friday. It was awesome. My local started doing Genesis, and from what I've been seeing, people really like it. It still feels like modern Yu-Gi-Oh, but it feels less powerful, a little more balanced, even though there is still some really broken stuff happening in Genesis format, you know, looking at Lunalight, looking at Onomat Ryziel or whatever, right? There are definitely problems in the format, but everyone understands that that takes some time to iron out. The communication has been awesome. I can't help but to feel very, very positive about Genesis format. It is something I'm really looking forward to in 2026, is to see how this particular format develops, and I have high hopes for it. So yeah, Genesis format has been awesome. Last but not least, evaluation of the power level in the TCG 2025. I wanted to know your gut feeling overall. Are cards, are decks too powerful at the moment? Are they just right? Or is the power level even too low? And this is what people said. We've got 29% who are perfectly happy with how the power level is in current Yu-Gi-Oh! That's a solid number, you know? 60% are on the it's too high category, and this is also where I would have put myself. I don't think we are in way too high. Way too high is what I would have said in 2024, what combo decks did in 2024. I think with the stuff that came out in 2025, you know, like Mitsu, Yummy, whatever, like I can live with the power level of some of those decks, even though like some of the combinations I think we're doing just a little bit too much, but we're getting more in line with what I would like it to be personally. But still, I mean, this is a combined 70% almost of the community that feel like stuff is too powerful in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or at least 70%, not of the entire community, but 70% of the almost 5,000 people that responded to this survey, right? Which is a pretty sizable amount. Even though not all of those almost 5,000 were TCG players. It's almost 3,000 TCG players. It's something to take away from, I think. I guess, I mean, there's not much we can do about it. But if anyone from Konami sees this, I guess there you go. That's your feedback of the power level in the TCG in 2025. And then the last question I asked was just if you had to give the year 2025 a star rating out of 5 stars, just the gut feeling, how are you feeling about it? And the response was 3.8 out of 5. There was a lot of 4 and 5 star reviews, actually. There was a couple of people who gave it lower ratings, but for the most part, 4 and 5 was the most common, and we reach an average of 3.8 out of 5. It's a pretty solid year. I don't think I asked this question last year, but I can get behind it. You know, I would have given it a solid 4, I think. Just to summarize and maybe give a little bit of my own opinion on how this, like, why people feel this way. I think a lot of the decisions outside of the actual card design were really, like, spot on for me personally. You know, price support, time rules, Genesis, all this stuff. Like, there were so many good things that happened this year. And even towards the end of the year, the announcement of frame break cards for the next year, like, there's a lot of stuff that they did right this year. A lot of stuff. Small downsides for me, you know, archetype design this year wasn't perfect. It was better than last year, but it wasn't perfect yet. You know, in my opinion, decks are still too powerful and are too easy to combine. You know, Mitsuyami, K9, Vanquish Soul, or whatever. Some of those hybrids I think are just doing too much. So I would like the power level to be a little bit lower in that regard. But overall, archetype design, I would give like a 3 out of 5 this year. Banlist decisions, would have liked to see more hits and more frequent banlists. So 3 out of 5 there or something. And then product is something that, even though as a player, it doesn't always concern me that much, but I do see that, like, there's a constant, like, problem of vendors being like, hey, we are losing money on Yu-Gi-Oh products. And that has me worried, even though I don't personally, like, I don't purchase a bunch of product. Like, I open a box here and there. But for the most part, like, you know, I think there's got to be a way to make, like, the core sets better, right? Like, you look back at the core sets from this year, and it's like most of them are worth a lot less than what vendors pay for them. And that is something that needs some improvement in the future. But I'm hopeful that the frame breaks can do that. So we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully 2026 is even better than that. But I do think overall the year 2025 deserves a solid 4 out of 5 stars from me for a lot of the good efforts that they've done this year. And it makes me hopeful for 2026 personally. But yeah. And that was the responses for the TCG. And now it is time for 3,273 Master Duel players to tell us their opinions on the Master Duel year 2025. Which, once again, a very sizable amount of people. Thank you so much for taking the time to respond. Most dominant deck in Master Duel 2025. Actually, I lied earlier when I said 71% was the highest number anywhere. 82% is the winner in this category. I wonder which one it could be. 3% said Draco Tail. This is the most dominant deck in Master Duel, which is crazy. But it is, that's what 3% said. 6.3% remembered the beginning of the year. Snake Eyes was still pretty good in Master Duel, so they said Snake Eyes was the most dominant deck across 2025. And then 82%, you're never gonna guess this one, is Malice. Who could have thought that the deck that released at full power with extra copies of Gold Sarcophagus with Appaloosa legal, who would have thought that this deck could have been the most dominant deck across all of 2025? No, there is no way, right? Never, ever would I have guessed at that. That's gotta be because it's Josh viewers, right? That's the only way to explain this, right? It's just because I've brainwashed all 3,200 whatever people, right? It's gotta be that. It cannot be that they released this deck as a too powerful deck. No way. Anyway, yeah, next up. Next question. Least favorite deck to play against in Master Duel 2025. 6.94% said Tenpai. Hey, Tenpai makes it onto the award ceremony. It was everywhere in 2024. At the end of 2024, I still remember vividly in the presentation, like Tenpai was ruling everywhere in the least favorite to play against and stuff like that. But Master Duel players haven't forgotten about it. In Master Duel, the memory is still fresh. And to this day, you still play against Tenpai sometimes. So yeah, it makes it up here. Another Master Duel classic is Stun, 11%, never dies. There's always someone trying to win the coin flip against you and summon Barrier Statue, Pachi, Inspector Border, activate Macrocosmos, or whatever. You know, it's always there. There's always some people trying it, and there's always some flavor of Stun in Master Duel that tries to go first and do it. In Best of One, there's always a window for it. So Stun, 11%, and 50% Mal. Which I don't know if this might be related to 80% most dominant. Could be or could not be. No idea. Maybe. It's on you to decide. Malice wins least fun deck to play against. Most fun deck to play with in Master Duel 2025. 7%. Fiendsmith enjoyers rise up. You know, we're in there. We got 7% on Fiendsmith Control. This is pure Fiendsmith. For all the people, I can already see the comments whenever Fiendsmith is mentioned. Oh, I can't believe they said Fiendsmith when all it does in the Yubel deck or whatever. The option in the survey said Fiendsmith Control. All right? This is pure Fiendsmith, not any of the hybrid versions. 7.5% said Sky Strikers. I can't wait for Sky Striker to actually be at the power level that it is in TCG right now. Like when we get the Radiant Typhoon spell and the Fallen and the Virtuous. It's so sad that those are not in Master Duel. But it was fun to mess around with it. You know, I wasn't able to really get much success with the deck when I try-harded it a little bit. It's a fun deck to play with. And 17% said Draco Tail, which would have been my personal option. I think Draco Tail, to me, felt even better in Master Duel than in the TCG because it finally gave me a meta deck that didn't just get destroyed by Max C. I thought that felt so good to just like, especially in Master Duel where you have to play the Max C mini game. It's like, okay, finally, I can play a deck that doesn't care and still feel good. It wasn't the best deck, but yeah. No Malice? Crazy, right? That's crazy. Most fun deck to play against in Master Duel. Surely Malice is here somewhere. 9% Fire King. Again, dude, I forgot about this deck. This was also one of my favorite decks to play this year. I loved this deck in the first half of the year. That deck was awesome in Master Duel. That deck was sick. So yeah, 9% said Pure Fire King. 13% said Sky Striker, which I think there's a lot of people who hate playing against Sky Striker, which I guess maybe are just the more vocal part of the community, but I was surprised by this. I wasn't surprised that people liked playing Sky Striker, but I was always under the impression that people also hated to play against it. I mean, it's just 13%. It's not that many. 26% said Dracotail. Yeah. All I can say to this is the latest Duelist Cup, whenever I lost the coin flip, I was just praying that the first card was a Dracotail card. I was just like, please let me play Yu-Gi-Oh! Especially when I drew like, I don't know, one Ash Blossom only as my non-engine, but nothing else. I was like, please let it be a Dracotail card. Please let it be a Dracotail card. Please don't be Dormouse or whatever, or Dodo whatever. So yeah, I agree with this one. Most powerful new archetype in Master Duel in 2025. Mitsurugi is 7%. Dude, Mitsurugi in this exact category in TCG had freaking 50% or something. It was a wash for Mitsurugi in the TCG. But in Master Duel, they take third place. Second place is Dracotail, which I think it seems more powerful in Master Duel because of Max C, which is true. And then almost 80% is Malice, which, yeah. Master Duel is just Malice. I don't know, man. It's been Malister Duel, yeah. Mitsurugi pales in comparison to Malice in Master Duel. Ryziel isn't even on here. Ryziel didn't make the list, which is because Malice released at complete full power and Ryziel had pre-hits. Like, Ryziel came out nerfed and Malice didn't, and no one knows why. Probably because it's waifus or something. I don't know. It is so clear that they wanted Malice to be so broken in Master Duel. They had all the infos. They knew it. They knew how good these decks were from TCG and OCG. They acted accordingly with Ryziel. They were like, yeah, we're going to hit Ryziel. We know how strong it is. With Malice, they did the opposite. They just released it with way more powerful options than it ever had in OCG or TCG, right? Like, for us in the TCG, we never even had Appaloosa with Malice. Like, Appaloosa was banned during Snake Eye format. We never got to play Malice with Appaloosa. And then that monstrosity just came to Master Duel. Everything at 3 already had March Hare from the beginning and all those other things. The player numbers suffered from this. This is not just like whatever, my opinion. The player numbers were not that great for the months after Malice came out in that state. But yeah, most powerful new archetype, not even a contention in Master Duel. Most fun favorite new archetype in Master Duel 2025. Mitsurugi, well received in Master Duel. I mean, it's not really gotten to the point yet where everyone and their mother is just playing some Mitsurugi combo slop, even though that stuff is possible in Master Duel. I guess that is one thing. There's a lot of negatives about Max C, but one thing it does is it does kind of disincentivize people from playing like Mitsurugi Fiendsmith. I mean, people are playing Pure Mitsu, people are playing Mitsu Orcus sometimes. There's Mitsu Ryziel, but it's not quite the same. I mean, we don't have Yami yet. I guess that's the thing. We have to wait and see. Once we get Yami, maybe people are going to start hating Mitsurugi even more. But so far, I think it's just a matter of Mitsurugi not being as dominant as it was in TCG, or is in TCG, right? So, but it was also a well-received archetype. As an archetype, people like it, I think. Fiendsmith is on here. People like Fiendsmith, whether it's because it's a cool pure deck or whether it's because it makes every single combo deck in the game stronger. I mean, people love their Fiendsmith cards in Master Duel, you know, whether it's a combo piece in Mitsurugi decks or in Memento decks or in Orcus plays Fiendsmith. There's so many decks that play the Fiendsmith engine. And Master Duel at the moment is the only out of the 3 formats that is still going to have Moon in early 2026. So I don't think Fiendsmith is going to go anywhere anytime soon, at least as an engine. Yeah. And Dracotail wins the next category. I feel like in terms of most fun favorite, everything in 2025, the interesting one is second and third place, because Dracotail, it's a friggin' wash every time. Dracotail 27% takes most fun favorite new archetype in Master Duel. Weakest new archetype in Master Duel 2025. Mimighoul, 4.5%. I mean, haven't really seen Mimighoul in any rank after gold or something. I've messed around with it once. It didn't feel that bad to me, but it does appear on here. It's just 4.5% though. 13.8% said yugioh. The only thing I remember about yugioh is losing to it sometimes when it went first, actually. Like, sometimes when it goes uninterrupted, it can make some pretty crazy things happen. If they go first and they draw the good half of their deck, then it can be somewhat scary. But for the most part, it's pretty bad. And 71%. Ashen number 1. Let's go, baby. Ashen finally wins something. Weakest new archetype in Master Duel 2025. Even outclassing Argo Stars. Argo Stars not even on here in Master Duel. But Ashen, it's the Ashen sweep. There's a couple of decks that were in this category as well, and I think they are barely under Mimighoul. I think Argo Stars and BES were 4 and 5. Honestly, people just love making fun of the mediocre TCG exclusive archetypes. Most powerful legacy support in Master Duel 2025. This one's pretty close category. Third place, Orchist. Yeah, I mean, people love Orchist in Master Duel. They also love it in TCG, but in Master Duel, we have Nightmare Mermaid. And that means Orchist is a lot more consistent and a lot more viable. Even as a pure deck or Orchist Fiendsmith or whatever, that deck is popular in Master Duel, all things considered. You know, like it's not a top tier deck. It's not Mitsurugi Ryzeal, Malice, Onomat Ryzeal, or Draco Tail level popular, but it is pretty good. It's a deck that's strong and people like it for that. So yeah, Orchist is up here. 19.5% said Lunalight. And once again, this deck is scary. Lunalight takes most powerful legacy support, second place in both categories, actually, TCG and Master Duel. And I think this one, the percentage here is higher because best of one. Liger Dancer is a whole different beast in best of one. And I've also noticed this, you know, I've been playing Draco Tail for weeks now with no outs to Liger Dancer, and I get no second chance. You know, I don't get a side deck to maybe adjust for it. I got nothing. I can either make my deck worse into everything else and play an out to Liger Dancer, or I can just accept losing to it. And at the moment, I've just been on the I accept losing to it train, so I can understand why people are scared of it and why it's so powerful, in best of one especially. And first place is Blue Eyes. I mean, this one was kind of weird in Master Duel, because in Master Duel, we got the Blue Eyes support before Primite, like way before Primite. So in the beginning, people played this before, like without Primite even, but it got to a point where this was so popular that they actually did something about it on the Forbidden and Limited list, which is still crazy to me, considering all of the power level that all of these decks were at in Master Duel in 2025. The fact that they felt the need to put ban list hits on Blue Eyes is crazy to me. It's genuinely crazy to me. I think they put Maiden and Sage to 2 before Malice came out. Think about that. Actually, don't think about that. That's not a very fun thought. It's crazy. But yeah, the Blue Eye support was good. People loved it. It was another deck that wasn't that bad into stuff like Maxi. It was giga popular because people love Blue Eyes. Eventually, it got Primite as well. And even now, you still play against Blue Eyes sometimes. Not very popular anymore, but you still play against it sometimes. What was your favorite legacy support in 2025? In third place, we also got Blue Eyes. I was surprised that this wasn't higher. I thought people loved Blue Eyes way more than that, but we got 11% almost for Blue Eyes in favorite legacy support. Slightly before that, once again, Orchist. And in first place, this time around, we actually have Sky Striker. So once again, this is a moment where people recognized that Sky Striker support, like, wasn't that crazy. Like, the deck is good, but it hasn't really been able to keep up super well with some of the top tier decks in the format, but people just like it. You know, there's a very solid fan base for Sky Striker, and so it wins favorite support, even though not powerful support. It is powerful support, but not the most powerful, I guess. Most disappointing legacy support in Master Duel in 2025, 9% ABC. Yeah, I haven't really seen this anywhere, the new ABC cards, so fair enough, I guess. 10% Tenny. This is something that I think it was Supreme Darkness in the TCG. This could have made it onto the TCG list as well. I think Tenny Sword Soul is a deck that, you know, a lot of people remember it quite fondly and would have been really happy if it returned to the metagame. But Tenny support just didn't really deliver, right? Like that just didn't quite make it. And I can see why people are disappointed by that, because people really like Sword Soul. Like Sword Soul Tenny is regarded to as a pretty healthy and balanced deck. And so I think people would have liked it to actually be better in order to make an impact on the format, but unfortunately it didn't. And then the BES support wins 17%, wins first place, most disappointed. This was crazy to me, because I guess for a little bit of context for this one, it seems like, I don't know if this is a set in stone concept that they do every year, but it seems like every year they have a release where they release something in Master Duel first, or maybe across like the same time as other cards, which in 2023, that was Promethean Princess, which came out in Master Duel first. It was a Master Duel exclusive card for a few weeks. And then the TCG got it and the OCG got it as well. And then last year, it was Hallow and Ween, which were completely unplayable. Also kind of funny, I guess. It was a meme. So it's like, okay, whatever. And then this year, it was BES, which for some reason, they chose this archetype to make it like a release across all games at the same time to celebrate something. I think it was because it was BES apparently is a reference to another Konami game. And there was like the Gradius anniversary this year. And so they decided to roll out BES support. It came to Duel Links at the same time. It came to Master Duel. It was like rolled out as like this big thing. And then the cards were just ass, which was weird to me. I don't know. I feel like they could have done so many more cooler things this year as like a global release in all games at the same time. Like the Fallen and the Virtuous, for example. It was a global release between Duel Links and Master Duel, I guess. And Burst Protocol is already out in the OCG, so they have it. Yeah, the TCG just doesn't have it yet because we're lagging behind. I don't know what they were thinking with this one. I feel like it was a cool idea. I always like when they release cards in Master Duel first or ahead of time. I think that's cool. But this archetype just wasn't it. Most powerful individual card released in Master Duel 2025. Malice Dormouse is in third place with 12%. Molchami Fuwalos came to Master Duel this year with 20.5%. It takes second place in this category. This card, of course, didn't appear in the TCG question because in TCG, this card is from 2024. So I didn't include it in the TCG question, but for Master Duel, it was this year and it takes second place. And Habakiri still takes first place. I mean, people are able to recognize that even though Malice is a more dominant deck than Mitsurugi in Master Duel, Habakiri is still a better card than Dormouse. Like, I think that's without question. You know, in terms of individual cards, Habakiri still eats all of the Malice cards for breakfast. The overall product, the overall deck, Malice is more dominant than Mitsu, but like Habakiri is an insane Yu-Gi-Oh card in terms of what it all does, in terms of all the application, you know? But Fuwa sneaks in there in second place. I mean, it's fair enough. Fuwa is a very, very powerful Yu-Gi-Oh card. Not gonna debate that. But Habakiri still takes first, even though, of course, not quite as high. In TCG, this was like a 70% sweep or more. And here it's a little split. I think some people also said White Binder instead of Dormouse. I think those two were relatively close to each other. So if you combine White Binder and Dormouse, I think they would overtake Fuwa. But as individual cards, Fuwa is second. Most well-designed card released in Master Duel in 2025. And it's a very close call here between three cards in the first three places. I mean, it just seems like people couldn't really decide which card they really loved in terms of card design in Master Duel. We do have Molchami Fuwalos in third place, which is, of course, I know this is a very polarizing topic. I understand. There's some, like, this is a card, people either hate or love Fuwa. There's almost no in between. Let's not get into that right now, all right? There's 9.2% who said it was the best designed card in 2025. This is going to make some people seethe with anger right now, but, you know, 9% of people said that. 9.8% of people said Kato Draco Tail. I assume same reasoning as for the TCG thing. People like engine cards that get stronger going second. That is a well-designed concept, I think. And Draco Tail 5 mana takes first. So, yeah, no Fallen and the Virtuous in this one because it didn't come out in Master Duel yet. So we have Ketsu and 5 mana in this one. And Fuwa gets in because of that. So, yeah, that's your top three most well-designed cards released in Master Duel. But it is really close in this one. Worst designed card in Master Duel in 2025. 10.11% said Malice White Binder. Yeah, fair enough. 12.71% said Malice Dormouse. And 25% said Habakiri. Look, I don't have to put you on much suspense with these categories, all right? Like, it's, yeah. White Binder, Dormouse, and Habakiri take the three worst designed cards released in Master Duel 2025. Yeah. Habakiri is what Chundra was last year, I think. I think for 2024, we had like Chundra or Sangan Summoning on top of all of these categories. Dude, why are we? All right. Favorite selection pack released in Master Duel 2025. I wanted to have an equivalent of the pack question in the TCG, but of course we have different products in Master Duel. We just have like new selection packs. So I just wanted to get a feel for like which kind of packs people liked because it introduced cool archetypes or like the format or whatever that happened after was cool. So this is the Forbidden Liberated, which had Beansmith, Azamina, and Millennium in it, which had 14.5%. In second place, we have Ruler's Providence, which had Mitsurugi, Orchist, and Dragon Ruler. 3 pretty popular archetypes. I mean, Mitsurugi and Orchist are popular. Dragon Ruler is popular in my heart, so that counts. But that was people's second most favorite. And then in first place, we have Aerial Superiority, which brought us Archmage, Odeon, and Draco Tail. So of course it wins favorite selection pack released in 2025. 23.04%. It was a pretty good pack. I mean, it's also the most recent one, I think. But I would have also picked it because Draco Tail. I just enjoyed Draco Tail so much. Least favorite selection pack released in Master Duel 2025. 9.75% said Beat the Boss Rush, which had BES Dragon Maid and some cyber support, which I think is this just wasn't worth opening. I think if you spend gems on this one, you feel really bad. So yeah, this was not a great pack. It was not a great pack. It really wasn't. In second, we have Battle of Destiny, which also, like, this is what those two have in common. They had no impact on the format whatsoever. This one had Arcana Force and Gladiator Beast. Those two were just like, if you spend gems on them, I'm sorry. In first place is Struggle in Wonderland. You know, at least it had meta impact. It had impact on the format, you could say. I guess people just didn't like the impact that it had on the format. 33.49% said that was my least favorite selection pack that released in this year in Master Duel. It was a really good one in terms of the cards that were in it, but that's not all that goes into this decision, I'm afraid. But yeah, at least if you spend gems on this one, you got good cards out of it, I guess. Best Forbidden Limited List update in Master Duel 2025. In Master Duel, we had a bunch more updates. We have one every month. So what were your 3 favorite ban list changes? Look, in Master Duel, even though we are supposed to get a small-ish update every month, we had some ones that were way larger than others. Like literally, there's one that was just unlimited swap rock and signet mining. Those were all the changes in March, for example. So like some ban lists are so much bigger than others. So in third place, we had the August update, which was a bunch of toxic cards, actually. This was a pretty good one in the grand scheme of things. This one got rid of Dweller, Artifact Scythe, and Paradise Smasher. It's a pretty good one, actually, for a Master Duel ban list. So this one takes third place. In second place, we have the February ban list, which semi-limited max C alongside some other things that no one remembers because all that matters is semi-limit max C. I think it banned like anti-spell or something. I don't know exactly, but it was like, what I've written down is it was max C semi-limit, some floodgate hits, and it was small Tenpai and Yubel hits because it was the beginning of the year. Mainly max C semi-limit, which was big. And then first place, not even close. We were begging for this forever in Master Duel, and people even stopped believing. I myself wasn't sure if I could believe it because it had an alt art, and people were saying, oh, they're not going to ban Appaloosa because it has an alt art. And then in November, they finally did. They got rid of Appaloosa, and that wasn't even the only thing. They limited called by on this one. It had a couple of Ryziel and Malice hits, but those didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Like, it limited Chessy Cat, which was like, okay. But yeah, the main thing here was, of course, Appaloosa was banned, and people liked that. One card that should have been in Master Duel in 2012. Oh, I wonder what got 66.6% in this one. Third place, we had Malice Whitebinder based. Second place, we had Droll Lockbird, which was the #1 pick in the TCG, but I guess there might be one other card that people might be more concerned about than Droll Lockbird in Master Duel, and it's got 66 is low, by the way, but Maxi takes it, of course. This category is reserved for Maxi until it's gone. Every single year from now on, if we repeat this survey, Maxi is going to win every single time. Yeah, 66% is low. I have no idea why. There are people defending Maxi out there. There's a couple of pretty good honorable mentions in here. Like people said Called by the Grave. You know, they're not wrong. Called by the Grave should be banned. People said Moon of the Closed Heaven. People said D-Barrier. People said Splash Mage. People said Dimensional Shifter, Protoss. You know, there's a lot of cards that deserve to be banned. That's why it's not 100%. Because maybe there's some people out there who are like, I hate Called by more than Maxi, or I hate Protoss more than Maxi. That doesn't necessarily mean that they want Maxi to stay. Change the category to one card other than Maxi? I could do that too, yeah, maybe. But yeah, Maxi takes the cake. And then we have the power level question for Master Duel. Remember, in the TCG, the most popular answer was too high, like slightly too high. In Master Duel, we've got... It's not quite the same picture as the TCG, all right? Like, the power level in Master Duel is a different question than the TCG. I mean, yes, in the TCG, we also had a bunch of people saying too high. In Master Duel, we have 0.21% who said way too low, 0.89% who said too low, 6% who said perfect, which was almost 30% in the TCG. We have 54% saying too high, and we have almost 40% saying way too high. Way too low is probably just trolling. I have no idea. Way too low is 7 people. 7 people out of like almost 4,000 said way too low. Sure. Over 90% of the respondents that said too high or way too high for Master Duel. If there's anything that the Yu-Gi-Oh community, or at least the people that I reached with this survey, were able to agree on, it was that the power level in Master Duel was too damn high. Whether it was just a little bit too high or way too high, that was the power level of Master Duel in 2025. And then, last but not least, the rating for Master Duel in 2025. How did Master Duel players, and remember, only Master Duel players saw those questions. In case that wasn't clear for any of the 2 surveys, if you said you were just a TCG player, you didn't see the Master Duel questions, and vice versa, of course. And only the people that said I play both saw both questions, of course. So Master Duel players that answered this survey gave this year, on average, a 2.9 out of 5. With the most common response just being a 3 out of 5. You know, it was just like right down the middle. It was like, all right, it was okay. Could have been better. Not the worst, not the best. I think Draco Tail played a role in this towards the end of the year, I will say. I mean, of course, there was like this, the beginning of the year, which I barely even remember. But then there was like this Malice hole that I fell in personally. And then like Draco Tail pulled me out of that hole, right? And so, yeah, 2.9 out of 5 is the average evaluation of the year in Master Duel, which is worse than the TCG, but I guess it could be worse. Here's to hoping that we get some of the OCG ban list changes, mainly the Max C ones in Master Duel as well. And then we can all play a little bit. I mean, I think this is just mainly related to the power level, right? Like, if anyone, like, Master Duel doesn't have a lot of the aspects that the TCG has, right? Like, a lot of the, like, product-related problems, but also, like, time rules or, like, alternative formats. I guess they could announce that for Master Duel. They just don't bother. A lot of those things, like the price support and so on, those are stuff that, like, affects people's view on the year in the TCG, but it doesn't really apply to Master Duel. Master Duel, literally all we have is, do you enjoy the game or not? Like, do you like the formats that are being played or not? There isn't much outside of that. And so people are giving it a 2.9 out of 5. I assume that is mainly because the power level was simply too high and certain decks were too dominant for too long. So yeah. And that's the results for 2025 for TCG and Master Duel. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating or watching or both. I'm very happy to have reached almost 5,000 people with this. Of course, I mean, a large part of that is going to be my viewership, but at the same time, I did ask some other content creators and communities to share it around, try and get as many people involved as possible, to try and get opinions from as many corners of the community as possible. I don't know how successful that was. It was another year in Yu-Gi-Oh's history books. As for my personal opinion at the end here, I already made a recap from my own perspective. I uploaded it on the main channel. I thought it was a pretty good year for Yu-Gi-Oh, especially for the TCG. I was really happy with a lot of decisions that happened, like outside of the cards themselves. You know, a lot of the things like, I don't know, Genesis format, price support, time rules, frame break announcements. Like, there was a lot of very good things for the game, in my opinion. I think archetype design this year was better than the year before. However, I want to say the bar for this was on the floor. But still, I think archetype design is going in the right direction right now, at least for my personal preference. If some of those archetypes hadn't been so easy to splash and combine with each other, like Mitsurugi with Yami, like I was fine with pure Mitsu, I was fine with pure Yami, I wasn't fine with Mitsu Yami, and so on. But we've talked about all that already. So I think I would have given this year a solid 4 out of 5 for the TCG. I would have given this year like a 2.5 out of 5 for Master Duel. I feel like the Malice hole, as probably the most vocal Malice hater, like it was a pretty big problem for me towards the middle of the year with how dominant Malice was in Master Duel. Like that really took away from my enjoyment of the game. And it just like, it's not just Malice, also just like the fact it still has Max C and so on and so forth. I'm happy about some things that happened in Master Duel this year, like the Cult by Limit, and I mean Max C semi-limit was a first step, I guess. But I just think like Master Duel is like moving slower than I would like it to. I see more movement in the TCG. I see more effort behind the TCG decisions than the Master Duel ones. So I think just Master Duel is like further away from what I would like it to be than the TCG. But yeah, anyways, thank you all so much for taking the time to answer the survey. I really appreciate that. We're probably going to bring it back next year. I really like this sort of like recap at the end of the year to take a look at what the community felt. And yeah, I'm gonna try to get even more people involved next time, but for now I already think like almost 5,000 respondents is pretty good. Yeah, hope you enjoyed the presentation. Hope you took something away from it, and thank you for watching.